Lines podcast. Blurred Lines is a movement where we'll explore the intersection of career, church, and community. With my guests, we'll have a conversation about life, career, advocacy, discipleship, leadership, all of the things. And we hope that you will be inspired by our conversation to live a fully integrated life. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Zanae. Welcome back to the Blurred Lines podcast. This is episode 3. And I'm excited to be joined today with my friend, Josh Riddick. Title, CEO?
State Director.
State Director for Live Free.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't caught up in a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
But we met when I was running for state auditor in 2022, I think.
Wow, was that long ago?
It was that long ago. Yeah. And I felt a type of way about you and the organization at the time. Remember we talked about this because you guys didn't endorse like certain.
Yes.
We
did canvas for you though.
You did, yeah. But then ultimately brought the church on to be part of Black Church Coalition. So yeah, I'm excited to get into all the things.
Yes.
Your background, you were pastor, church leader. You're on the other side of that in community, and I think for the audience, what I try to do with Blurred Lines is why is it important to navigate all those spaces? How do we navigate it? And not having these like silos where I'm at church over here, I don't talk about it over here. Right. I think it'd be great to get your perspective from a religious standpoint on how the church should be involved in advocacy, because I think some people say like churches should only do this, but we know that Jesus was an advocate.
Politics out of pews.
Yeah. So, so before we jump into all of that, a little bit about where you're from, your background, how you grew up, and then maybe how you got into like the work that you're doing now.
Absolutely. So, I am a military kid. So my pops was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I moved around a lot. I was actually born in the state of Washington, then moved to the UK, lived there for a few years, then to Florida, and then I spent most of my life in Michigan.
Okay.
So all my family is in a city called Jackson.
Okay.
Jackson, Michigan is a small town. The only noteworthy thing about it, it's got a fantastic burrito bar downtown, and Tony Dungy's from there. And there's a big old...
That's a big deal.
It is. I didn't realize it was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
It's a bigger deal here than it is there.
For sure. Yeah.
But the biggest thing about Jackson was it had a massive state prison. And so Jackson had a high concentration of poverty, high concentration of homeless folks. We were in the housing crisis when I was a kid in terms of people leaving and moving out of the city. And that was kind of the backdrop of my childhood. I grew up in a very, inner city neighborhood. There was poverty there, but it didn't feel like that to me. It was a working class family. My parents split up when I was in second grade. And then my mom remarried a few years later. And that was like a shift in our lives because my stepdad was a professional. He wore a tie to work every day. He wore a suit. And so I watched our experience in like class identity start to change. But then that was super short-lived because that was right before the housing crisis hit. So 2008, my stepdad loses his job. Family kind of goes into a bit of a financial spiral. And my parents, like so many families, do their best to keep their kids from feeling the burden of that. But the pantry got real bare sometimes. And Campbell's soup was my lunch and dinner a couple days in a row. Thankfully never like missed a real meal. But we felt that. It was around that time that I started my own faith journey. And that kind of launched me into community work. I wanted to when I found myself in church, the first thing I wanted to go do was go serve in my community. So I was helping out at food pantries, setting up mobile food pantries in my community. I found so much joy in making sure people weren't hungry. And that was how I understood my faith, understood my purpose as a follower of God, was to care for folks who were hungry and struggling and unhoused. And, for a long time, I thought that's what everyone believed. I thought that was just normal because that was my context. That's what my church did. We had the biggest food pantry in the county, incredible programs. My uncle ran those. Shout out to Uncle Terry. But yeah, that was like the beginning for me. Is those first 14, 15 years.
Okay. And then, so where did you go to college?
Yes. So after high school, I went to college. With all of that energy, I wanted to go study ministry. And I went to a small Christian university called Spring Arbor. Wouldn't recommend to folks, but it was a formative
the school
experience.
specifically,
or like quite frankly, a ministry degree. I don't know if I would recommend a ministry degree. I think you should go get a religion degree from somewhere and some other skills. Because the ministry department couldn't teach me. There was classes on like how to go serve in inner city context, but it was taught by white dudes who lived in they're like the last of the evangelicals in inner city Detroit. And so they'd walk into class talking about, stuff that was happening in the 80s. I'm like,
Have you been outside?
Yeah, like, there's words for that now. It's called mass incarceration. You can't call people junkies, like stuff like that. And I was like, I'm paying for this shit. So it was not a great experience in that way. But I had this profound encounter where I was surrounded by people who called themselves Christians. And, I get there in 2012. It was Obama's reelect. I had this experience that like is singed in my memories of all these like classmates, varying degrees of political interest and awareness. But there was some very loud, self-identified conservative students that were on my floor or around who desperately wanted Barack Obama to not win. And their rationale wasn't anything about him. And I understood politics, but I really wasn't entrenched in it and kind of trying to avoid conversations with people about it. I was curious about it, but I didn't want to talk about it. And, my friends would talk about how expensive it is and important it is to get the spending down and not have it. I'm like, what does an 18-year-old know about that? But I go to the Salvation Army where I'm a volunteer. My job in the Salvation Army at that time as a freshman in college was to break up fights at the after-school basketball program. That's all I did. And I loved it. But I got there late one day, and I walked into the middle of a prayer. And there was a girl who was in 2nd or 3rd grade praying. And in her prayer, she asked that Barack Obama would win so her family didn't lose their food stamps. And, is it a reality that if he didn't win, she would have lost her food stamps? No. But it's certainly possible when people in politics say, this is what I want to do.
Right.
And you can have rhetoric and you can have policy ideas, but the actual implementation of that impacts little girls like that. And that for me was like, oh God, I can't just ignore this stuff. I can't just make it about the conversation or debate. This is real life for this little girl. She's here to get a free meal tonight because she might not eat tomorrow. And that lit a fire in me of like, whatever it is that I do, I can't ignore the very real political and material conditions of people and how politics shapes that. And I didn't know how to do anything with that yet. But it certainly was the start of something.
Yeah. One thing I think that I've always respected about you is I have appreciation for your storytelling and how you draw the connection between like purpose and relationship to like why do we care about or why are we doing the things that we're doing. So I think you do a great job articulating that. I have tried to steal the relational organizing model or theory, even when it comes to like some of my professional association and like even church, right? Because like, why are we doing this? Like, especially when we see a day and age membership associations, people are not volunteering in the same way. Why not? And so how do we get those people to still care about the organization? Why do I volunteer and give back so much to the accounting profession? Because I'm Black and I'm a woman and I'm just now 40, and there's not a lot of people going. I've always been the only one, and so I give back to show that this is a viable career opportunity. And so I feel like you've always done a great job of like connecting that for people.
I appreciate that.
Do you feel like where did you learn that from, first of all? Not at the seminary or the ministry.
No. I don't know if there's like a particular source, but there's always been like a orientation from the people around me to be curious. And so I don't know where I like practiced or refined that just over time, but I think some of it is like I have existed in all sorts of different kinds of spaces. I have Black family in the South. I got white family in the Midwest, and have held different class positionalities and like trying to understand how this stuff works and why people do the things they do a lot of observing and asking a lot of questions and just being really curious. And I really love people. I'm really fascinated by people. I think we're pretty cool. Some of us, yeah. I think most.
But
most of us.
even if somebody is like
super problematic,
yeah, it's still interesting.
There's
like
a curiosity.
why are you like this?
The curiosity of like how you arrived there.
Yeah.
So some of it is a lot of the ways that my family would articulate why we were the way we were was through storytelling. I didn't. My mom would explain her relationship with her mother, my grandma, through a story about our great grandma. My mom would explain a relationship to capital or resources based on a story of her childhood. And so I have this like bank of stories that are from my family that I don't even know if it was done with intention, that would be told just to help us make sense of things. And I think my dad had a similar practice too. And again, I don't think it was intentional. I think for my family, it was like we had a lot of people who loved to talk. We got hella yappers. But we don't have folks who are always great in my growing up of like being able to have emotional articulation, but they could story tell. And so that helped me be able to see through those stories. Oh, that's what you really mean. Remember my dad, told me the story of losing his mom at 14 to cancer. And that was the first time I heard him ever say like he really loved a woman that cared for him was that. And like really mean that. And we did that over breakfast. I was eating cereal when I was like 13, and I was like, why is he telling me this story? And because I'm hearing this story, I'm trying to understand what does this mean? What is this for? Why is he telling me this now? So for me, it's some of those tools where we're just trying to make sense of the people around me, the things around me, from folks who were open to communicating, but I don't know if we were always clear about what we were communicating, what we intended.
So, what was your first job?
First job?
Profession.
Oh, I mean, I talk about first job.
Yeah, first professional job, career.
Let's talk about both, because they both matter. My first job was a landscaper at 14 years old. Okay. I was working for a private school in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it's called Green Hill School. It's one of the most academically rigorous schools in the Midwest. And I landscaped the yard, I trimmed the bushes, I took out the bee's nest. And to be around a school that costs more than most universities in the Midwest per year, and to walk those halls, I realized like there's an entire stratosphere of people that I simply am not familiar with. These kids are like, Harvard was a backup option. Sure. And for me, Harvard was the apex of education. Sure. Not because I knew anything about Harvard, but like that's just what I was told, Ivy League, and like there's a level of elitism even beyond that I didn't even know existed. So that was a huge like experience for me. I went and blew all my money on video games, which really pissed my parents off. But like I was very happy about it.
Sure. That's how we work. So
yeah, and I was like, what else am I working for? Right. I only make so much money on the table. Yeah, my first professional job. I mean, if we're not counting college stuff, like coming out of college, I worked at a call center for a university. And that was maybe where some of those skills got sharpened too. Okay. Because I had to talk to people and strangers, and I heard some crazy stories. And, online adult education can be incredibly predatory. And I didn't want to, like, lean into that predation on, like, people who are hungry to grow their careers. Yeah. And so this balance of, like, I have a job to do here, and I can't hold your hand, but I can be honest with you. And also want to hear like your really interest, like your actual interest, your actual self-interest as to why you want to do this program. Also just like it was working for Indiana Wesleyan. In Indiana Wesleyan, they hired a bunch of people at the same time, and they didn't say this explicitly, but they wanted to enroll a lot more black people because folks was pulling up. Sure. So my office was very black. And we had hands down the best office potlucks, like period. For sure. Oh my god. Yeah. But we also just like built a really fun culture. My supervisor our first week was like, "What would make this culture great?" I was like, "I want a Nerf hoop." He was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, like that would make us." So we played Nerf Pig every day. And had potlucks. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It was a blast. I made 60 calls a day. Yeah. So I was the first and last time I had a job. Or when I left the building, I was done with the job. I remember that experience. I'll never forget it. I don't know what that's like now. No. But it was a gift to come out of school and have that. And I probably rushed myself too fast to get out of there, believing I had some sort of divine purpose I hadn't accessed yet.
Yeah.
And I was doing just fine. I could have stayed there.
Sure.
So really, I still talk to a lot of my colleagues over there.
Yeah.
They're good people.
How'd you get from that? And then I don't know a lot of this history of you pastoring a church. I remember, I feel like when we first met about Black Church Coalition, and we were talking through like, why do you care about this, blah blah blah, and your experience was because I used to pastor a church, and I have thoughts on what the church should be doing. Yeah. So I don't know how much you can get into like that, but just kind of like, how did you become a pastor? What did you?
Yeah, pastoring was the hardest season of my adult life so far, and you know, I don't know, this is not wood, but let's pretend it is. And I hope it stays the hardest. So I got out of college. I was working at that call center so I could pastor. Okay. So I got a part-time pastoral associate pastor gig at a small Methodist church on the Near East side of Indianapolis. They moved me to a parsonage, so my housing was covered. I thought that was going to be a good deal. Yeah. It was a small church. A lot of folks who were on government assistance, you know, physically or cognitively disabled. Incredibly beautiful and fragile community. Folks were in and out of addiction, in and out of homelessness. Our food pantry and our Wednesday night free meal was like the biggest programming we did, probably twice the size of a Sunday morning. And I hated pastoring there though. I loved the people. I really struggled with the pastor. Some of that is like he just wasn't a great leader, and some of that is because at 22 years old, fresh off of, you know, President Trump's first election, Michael Brown was killed a year before. Alton Sterling got killed like a month before I moved to Indianapolis. There was just so much fire that I had. Yeah. And I had no idea how to channel that. And it was policed more than it was processed. Sure. And it was just terrible. And then I also lived in a parsonage that had mice and was haunted. And so I didn't think a physical space could be inhabited by that type of thing. I was very wrong. So I had between really even what I could have dealt with those two things. It was the pastor that I was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't do this and love these people well, and so I should go before I hurt folks. And I really loved the city. Yeah, I got here and I was like, oh, this place is awesome. I came from Jackson, so like most places would probably be awesome. I really like this place, and I tell folks like I embraced the city and it embraced me back. There were so many folks that I would just reach out to, just cold emails. You know, people like Shannon Dykes, LaShawn DeCrow Storm, like, y'all, you don't know me, but I listened to your sermon and I like loved it. I saw your art piece and I loved it. And I just want to get to know you. And folks were so open to just letting me come sit at their feet and listen and learn. And I felt like I received so much. And so even after I left that church, I was like, I don't want to leave this place. Sure. I ended up getting another gig at a different church on the northeast side of the city, just near Lawrence. They wanted me to help them become like a multiracial church. That was a very hard experience. I don't have a whole lot of criticisms of that space. I mean, at least none that I think are noteworthy. A lot of wild stories, but again, I just had a very tough time. But like what was never missing, and nobody ever had any questions about this from me. Josh has this profound commitment and passion and fire for justice work. I just didn't have an imagination for what it was. And so pastoring was what I thought it looked like. It wasn't. Like, you know, you cannot shepherd a people from the pulpit alone. Yes. You cannot push a people into prophetic life from preaching alone. And that was the only tools that I really knew how to utilize as a pastor. And so when I left that, bounced around a couple jobs, and I ended up starting my own equity organization, anti-racism organization. And, you know, me, a few other folks, Ben Tapper, Manon Voice, we were doing the thing, and it was cool. But it felt really uncomfortable over time for me to go into rooms to talk about the plight of Black people in my neighborhood, in my community, and it would be me. And it'd be Ben and Manon as well, but like for me individually, it started to feel like this was at best disingenuine, maybe at worst betrayal, to be compensated on the stories of people that aren't here. And I didn't know what to do with that yet, but by the time I pulled the plug, the pandemic had started, and then Drejon Reed and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many others were killed. And all these former clients and all the churches that I wanted to be clients but didn't want to be because we don't do that. All of a sudden, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I just kept saying, we're past the point of the book study.
Yeah.
We're done with the sermon. It's time to go organize.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shit, I don't organize.
Mm-hmm.
What does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a year later that Ben actually would send me the job to apply as an organizer. So maybe this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I jumped in with that, first organizer for the Black Church Coalition. Absolutely fell in love with it because it was the thing that I was criticizing myself of. Like, I don't go into rooms by myself. I don't go into rooms with stories that aren't mine. I get to bring other people, quite literally, into spaces that they wouldn't get to go to. And it's not because I've done it, it's because we've done it. And the way in which I've gotten to know people, know our community, and they've got to know me in a real vulnerable way, in a real transparent way, this is such a gift.
Yeah.
And I feel like all the tools that I developed to pastor, I still get to use.
Yep.
But without the, for lack of a better word, constraints of congregational life.
Yeah. I appreciate that journey. I mean, obviously, like in transition from First Lady inside a church doing the things, and then like what does that look like on the other side? And thinking through when I first started my blog, still First Lady of a church, but it was very much because like we see the decline in church attendance. People are not coming in these walls. So how can I get this message outside? So like it kind of began to fester. Like I have this calling. We talk about discipleship and missionary work inside this building. Like what else are we doing? So then in the transition, just really trying to like unpack what does that actually look like outside of the constraints of church, and are we saying we're doing these things, but are we actually doing them? And are we saying we're missionaries and disciples? How many disciples have we actually made as a church aside from these X amount of people that come to the same building every day, right? So I'm really trying to connect the call to like action and purpose, and it could be very much like the accountant in me because I'm very results driven. Like 1 + 1 is 2.
Input should be output.
That's exactly right.
Not, I don't see it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean that's why I was very much drawn to the work of the Black Church Coalition, because it's like there is a way to activate our churches outside of the building. Have you had to or how have you kind of unlearned traditional church? I don't know if you have the same traditional church. It kind of sounds like a little bit. I grew up in the church. I was an usher. I was a trustee. All this stuff, and then now I'm leading a church, and 40 or 35 years of we're in this box. This is what we do, and having to untangle that to get to the real work and purpose.
Yeah. So and a couple things just for context. I somehow dodged some of the trappings of traditional church that hurt people, right? I didn't grow up in a particularly hostile church to marginalized folks. We didn't have the presence of or the relationship to queer folks and poor folks and non-black or non-white folks, Latino folks, immigrant. None of that was ever I don't unlearn some things for sure, but it wasn't a very significant deconstruction.
Church hurt. Yeah, and I didn't have that church hurt either. I grew up in a very loving church.
I didn't have the whole purity culture thing either. That was in the air, but nobody was injecting it into my system, like a lot of people that I know. And so for me, I had an opportunity to some of the deconstructive work I had to do was really around what does God have to say about justice for Black people, but that processing got me really wrestling through when church we don't talk about our bodies in church. We don't talk about we'll mention our it's Heart Health Month, right? So we'll talk about we'll wear red on a Sunday, right? But we're not going to talk about what we brought to the church potluck and how and the food we get in our food pantry. Both of those things are actively killing us. We don't know how to talk about how we think about our bodies as existing not just vessels. I don't think we sometimes use this, at least even the language we use is like, this stuff's temporary and the soul is what's important.
Yeah.
And like that like old style Greek dualism that
Yeah.
I actually don't think is in the text.
Yeah.
How do we talk about like beauty and desire and people being enough and feeling like they're not enough and finding that in church and how they perform in church? How do we talk about performance as like, you know, I did a Bible study at one of our BCC churches a few years ago. And I asked them a question, like, is the gospel accessible? Like, can people access it easily? Mm-hmm. Like, well, no, we come in here and judge people. I was like, no, I don't mean to other people, I mean to y'all. And I feel start crying. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I feel so judged in this church. Mm-hmm. And like, they've been here for 40 years. Mm-hmm. They've been here for 30. And like, sometimes the folks in our church are like the worst gatekeepers, are the ones who feel the most isolated and most vulnerable and most disconnected. And we don't always know how to talk about that in a way that feels authentic. We don't know how to create space for conversations that are uncomfortable, disruptive to people. Sometimes in our churches that are like most hostile to like queer folks is because the leadership is actually unclear about their own identities. And instead of being safe to wrestle through that and acknowledge what they do and don't know, we have like a very hard, fast, clear, brutal kind of a presentation or expectation on things. And so all that stuff is really, really fascinating to me. And as something I've been really curious about. And in college, I was where I started to realize that, you know, Michael Brown gets killed in 2015. I pack up my car. I'm going down to struggle with the folks in Ferguson. Mm-hmm. I call Mama, listen, I'm going down to struggle with the folks in Ferguson. Joshua's bailing you out. I said, I thought you were. She's like, yeah, she's like, absolutely not. So I unpack my car because I don't have no money to get bailed out. So for me, I threw on the Black Lives Matter shirt, walking around campus. I was hosting conversations on campus and realized that the very image of God that some of my friends were engaging with was actually so different than what I thought. Like, the white male God doesn't mind brutality. In fact, their theology said that somebody has to die. When the state kills people, it's just part of the equation. And if Jesus was killed by the state, and that's a good thing, that when Michael Brown gets killed by the state, then maybe that was a good thing too. And that linear connection isn't that hard for people to make. And I realize a lot of that comes back to folks' theology, right? I remember I would watch the live streams almost every night, and it was the only way I'd send money if I had any, but I feel like the only way I really could be in solidarity. And most of my friends were just moved on from it. And I went down to one of my friend's dorms, and he was in his room, white kid from Kalamazoo. He was in his dorm just weeping, watching the videos of kids getting tear gas, teenagers, walking out of school and protesting like we see today. And I just sat on his couch with him, and we just watched, and we didn't say anything, and we both cried. And I didn't ask him why he was moved, and I didn't say anything because we were both men. We didn't want to talk about why we were crying. Sure. And I left the room 30 minutes later after the stream ended and went back about my day, and was like, why did he respond so much different than everybody else? And about a year, this is a good friend of mine. About a year later, he actually, had a conversation with me where he came out and was like, I'm on this campus as a queer man, and I'm trying to, just be honest about that with folks. And it clicked for me that like his experience of being marginalized and being keenly aware of a campus that was not going to respect and honor him gave him the kind of attentiveness and curiosity to look at this situation and feel it in a way that he could understand me better as someone who was on a campus, marginalized as a black man. And so that for me, it was like, oh, wow, my theology might need to shift here because I'm seeing something happen. He has a sensitivity to what's going on, a compassion about what's going on that feels exactly where the heart of God is. And that's where I feel. And if he shows up differently in the world, but he still shows up that way, maybe that's okay. And like that was a shift for me. And that whole season of like wrestling through that and coming to this city and trying to figure out how, I'm going to the protests and I'm showing up at every activation and like, man, what is it? How do I make sense of this? That sort of thing was where I wish our churches could get to, where we could wrestle through that together.
Yeah. What do you say to folks who may say the work that we're doing in the community is not the work of the church, or the church is to stay over here. We don't need pastors getting into politics, and there should be separate. Like, what do we? How do you respond to that?
So sometimes people have that expression because we have had a lot of history of bad leaders behind pulpits, and so people say that, often cite somebody who did something wrong, breached trust, harmed somebody from their role, and like I can hear that and see it,
which is not unique to church leaders.
Amen.
Like, it happens.
Amen. In which case, and because we have that kind of intense response specifically to church leaders, it makes me wonder if the way in which they've experienced harm is kind of showing up and being projected. Like, I see you're hurt and you're bleeding all over the place, and I want you to get that taken care of. And then let's talk about that, right? The other thing I would say is that, like, Jesus himself, if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, Jesus was a revolutionary figure. Jesus, with intent, came into Jerusalem as a counter protest to Pontius Pilate coming in on a horse. He came in on a donkey. That's an act of transgressive protest. He goes into the temple. That's a riot. That's not flipping tables. He destroyed an entire marketplace by himself. He built a following in the farmlands and in the hills, and marched that into the city. Like, if that happened today, I mean, I was at the State House 2 days ago. A bunch of these little young kids, powerful, brave kids, marched from their school to the State House, a place that their family and probably some of them pay with their tax dollars. They have a right to go into. The sheer fact that they marched there had the state police on edge. And like, thankfully we were there, trying to talk the state police down and get them to like relax a little bit. So I can imagine that Jesus marching with all the children he had and following him, and all the families he had following him, and all the men he had following him, marching into occupied Jerusalem. Like, yeah, that's a revolutionary act.
Right.
So that's a political act.
Right.
And then all the ways in which Jesus talked about challenging and changing systems, right? It wasn't, Zacchaeus didn't get to be welcomed in the community because he repented.
Right.
He came back in the community because he gave back the money he stole and then some. Right? So he flipped the very system he was exploiting people on, and then Jesus says, you're back part of this community. And so I tell people, you're not reading the text well.
Yeah.
You're maybe not reading the text at all. You quote it. Like, are we really reading it? So yeah, and I think I think that's important. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that answer. How have you? Because I believe what you're doing. I mean, I haven't seen it before in the way you've been able to mobilize churches together. Is there a secret sauce? We talked about relational organizing earlier and people's self-interest. Is that what it is? But I do feel like I've seen pastors and church leaders that were traditionally just kind of like in this one lane, and that the doors are open now, they're in this other space. Like, how have you navigated and done that?
I mean, I don't know if I've done anything unique. I've avoided doing things that would ruin the momentum. Our first BCC organizing meeting had 42 people at it, 2021, October 9th of 2021. And the energy in the room was crazy. There was a young man in the back of the room. As we're talking about what we want to build, he stood up, he yelled from the back. He's like, that's not going to work. That's not possible. And Frank Rock, who's one of our elders in the movement, turned and was like, no, it will work. Let me tell you why, brother. And I was like, standing up, like, whoa. The room was so energized by what was happening. Because I think people are hungry for a political home. People are hungry to be part of something. And that was before some of the stuff we've seen, right?
Yeah.
And so the kindling, I believe, has probably always been there in Indianapolis. But people being able to properly set the fire and not stifle it out.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I mean, if there's anything that I have contributed that is maybe helpful or unique, I don't want to be the front guy. I'm cool with that. I don't know. I don't need to be, I prefer our leaders to be that. And, I'm as good as communicators I need to be, but like, I don't need to always be in front.
Sure.
And I think a lot of organizing efforts around the country that I watch, organizers struggle to not be the guy, to not be in charge, and to not hold things with an iron fist. And I think our pastors struggle with that too. It goes across the country. The other thing is, I think of organizing as a spiritual practice. The ability to consistently and with discipline listen to the stories of people and care about those.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that at first. You know, I was starting to organize with folks in church who were coming outside for the first time since the pandemic had started. And the pandemic wasn't over when I started organizing, but we were through a part of it.
Yeah.
And so folks were coming back into church, maybe prematurely, and they were meeting back in person. And so I'm sitting down, and I used to really struggle with, not that I hope it never displayed, never felt like it displayed. But in my early organizing, I'd sit down with like the church mothers, and I would wonder, what do you think matters to you? What's important? Oh my God, Josh, the gun violence is out of control. Our young people are taking over the streets. And I knew that, you know, in Indianapolis and most cities, our youth gun violence makes up no more than 15 to 16% of all gun homicides. It's super small, not super small. It's a small amount where it's not the biggest thing. Fox 59 will tell you that's the biggest thing, but like it's not actually. And I listen to these old church ladies tell me that. And I say, well, why do you think that is? I say, hip hop music. That's the problem. I hear people bumping all the hip hop music, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, we're still saying that.
Yeah, right. And you hear me. That's what you hear bumping, right? So that would annoy me, and there'd be a thing in my brain that would say, oh, this person's just not serious. They don't know politics. They're only concerned about this issue. They don't want to build anything. And so I wouldn't like ignore them or cast them aside, but my internal posture towards them was to just flip the switch, and I'm not really, I'll send you an email. I'm not going to call you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you to speak.
Sure.
The consequence of that, though, was like I started to get into the habit of people who didn't agree with me. I was doing that. I started to catch it, and it scared me. And I had people calling out in me. And so I started this practice of like, make sure you lean in, don't turn. And so I had this conversation one day, like a year after I started, with this older woman, and I was telling her, you know, we got a meeting with the mayor, and it's a big public action. She's like, oh my God, if I could see the mayor, I'd have so much to tell him. I was like, oh really? What would you tell him? I'd tell him the street lights are busted, the roads don't work, there's too many potholes, the sidewalks is janky, and I'm like, oh, all right, here we go again. So I feel myself start to turn off.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, don't do that. So I'm trying to listen. She's like, oh man, ever since my grandson was killed, and so what's that?
That's it. Yeah.
She started telling me the story of her grandson who come home from incarceration, early 30s, was an active father, partner, moved in with the mother of his child, and like had his life together. And which is super hard to do when you come home from incarceration at any level. And he was doing it, and her grandma was so proud of him. And she told me that somebody wanted to buy like some sort of video game system off him, one of his friends. And he showed up to meet them one night, just a few months before I actually met her. They jumped out the car, or he jumped out the car, and they came out of the bushes and shot him and robbed him and killed him. And she knows who did it. Police essentially know who did it, but the ring camera that caught the shooting can't see anybody because the streetlights were on. And like when she said that, I almost like just burst into tears because it's like, oh my God, I almost missed it. Like how many times have I actually done that? How many times have I heard somebody start to tell me the thing?
Yeah.
And I almost completely missed because I didn't like how it sounded. I didn't agree with my politic. And I've really started to learn that a lot of the times that people are kept out of this experience of organizing is oftentimes the organizer. And it horrified me of how easy that was for me to do.
Yeah.
And it horrified me of how quickly I was ready to write her off in my head for someone who's had a very real experience.
Yeah. And we have to be able, as leaders, to be emotionally like in touch and aware of that, to be able to catch ourselves and correct ourselves. Because even like whatever type of organization you're leading, it's easy to go in and say like, this is how I think it should look. This is what I think we need to do. And if you don't fit in line with my vision, then like you gotta go and do that somewhere else. And I feel like that's where a lot of the movements fail. A lot of like churches are not growing. A lot of small businesses, entrepreneurs go out of business because we're so like tunnel vision.
Yeah, people get scared. They get scared of people doing something different, and scared of people leaving, scared of people doing it different than them. I need more people to organize in this city, and I think our city needs that. So I don't ever want to be the only show in town, but prefer not to. And there are whole cities where organizers are fighting each other over ideas and campaigns and stuff. I'm like, man, that would be fun.
Yeah. Is there space? Because my argument is always, you need people in front, you need people that are going out and do the protest, you need people that are going to be able to have the conversation behind closed doors. And like for me, like I'm not a protest person. I don't want to go to a rally. I don't want to go to a march, because to me, again, 1 + 1 = 2. Right. And if I'm just walking down the street, how do I get to the 2? You know, and so like for me, like I'm clear on kind of where I feel the impact is. So can you talk through, like, one, is there space for all of these different ways that people engage, and then how can people find their lane and their calling and how to get involved? When you say we need more people organizing and involved in it, how does somebody get in the game?
So I got a coach and friend named Carlos Saavedra. He's in Boston, organizer, has this model of, he calls the ecology of social change. You know, whole ecosystem to grow stuff well. You know, in my garden at home, we have pollinator flowers to attract bees to pollinate our cucumbers and our zucchinis and our watermelons. Because there's no bees to pollinate the stuff, it doesn't grow. And no matter how good the seed is, no matter how good the soil is. And so in an ecosystem of organizing, you got to have the whole thing. Yeah. And that is direct service and mutual aid, those social services, personal transformation, it's mass protest, structure-based organizing. People building stuff outside of the system, and it's folks inside the machine. And you want those things to be in relationship and in concert. You also want those folks, I think this is where Indianapolis has it's a growing edge. People have to be clear about what part of the ecology they're in and what that means. You're not changing. I think about, like, sometimes the folks, when the No Kings protests started to pop off, the purpose of mass protest is to carry a narrative and to launch people into the other parts of the ecosystem. Protesting on a Saturday at the State House is not moving any of those legislators. Our governor lives in Jasper. That's against the state constitution, by the way. And with your tax dollars and my tax dollars, he flies a helicopter to and from. That pisses me off. But he ain't paying attention to our protest. And so there's some people who go to those things like, that'll get them. It's like, no, it won't. The purpose of that is like to take a story about what we want and carry that out. And those do that well. But people aren't always clear about that. Yeah. Whereas structure-based organizing, the goal of that is to apply pressure to the inside of the machine. And so when I started organizing, I had this tremendous fear that my activist friends would be like, oh, Josh is a sellout because he didn't come to the protest. Josh is an op now. He didn't want to come to the protest. And I was like, that's just not what I do. Like, we do protests. Like, that is something we've done. I almost got arrested last summer doing it. But it's not the function of what we do. And so it's a tactic. And so I think there is space. I just think Indianapolis sometimes struggles to know who is doing what and where and honor that in other people.
Is there a trust factor too? Because when you mention like people being inside the system, and so if you got somebody inside the system that you're like, that's the person that as we're doing the things, they're inside. They're going to be trying to blah. I feel like I'm good at it. But then there may be some other people that are not so great at it. So when I'm like, well, I'm trying to do some stuff on this side, they're like, well, I don't really know because such and such was in the system and they are like, you know, a sellout or whatever.
But here's why you're great at it. You're great at it because you are always clear about what you can and can't do and the limitations of the system you're in. And you're clear about what you want to do. And then you're great at understanding that within the confines of that, here's what I am going to do. And there are some folks who run for office, who get into office, and they came from an activist or organizing space, and they want to be that when they're inside. And it's like, that doesn't work that way. The rules of that machinery is just fundamentally different. And until you learn those rules and learn to master those rules, and then there's some folks who get in because of those efforts, and then they don't want to be accountable to those things. And so I've always felt like you have been, you've sought to be accountable to the community you serve. You've always sought to be accountable to the movements you're connected to, and the organizations that support you. And I've never had is an a sellout right here?
I would like to break the system.
I know.
That's I feel like that's my responsibility.
You've always been clear about that.
Yeah. And so, and I feel like my role is inside the system. I got to understand how to play the game, who the players are, and really creating space to bring other people along. There's been so many rooms that like I'm the only one, and I'm like, if I don't say anything, this person's gonna be fired, or we need to give this person an equal. So like little things like that matter.
Absolutely.
And then also like if we're talking about, I don't know, data centers or whatever, at my job I can be like, I understand what the business community here is saying, but this is what the people on the ground are saying. So like there's a space that I'm very clear, like I'm in this system, I would like to break it.
Which is like, we don't want to send folks into the system unless they have that desire.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that desire, the material benefits, the relational social capital that comes from being connected to it, is just, it will overwhelm people.
But how do you, I don't know, I mean, how do you get people that are in the system to not be so comfortable? Like I am comfortable saying like I'm in the system, I want to break it, and I can operate outside the system, like I can do that. Not everybody has that. There are a lot of people who feel like I have this good job, I want to go to work, I want to go home, I want to raise my kids. The end.
Yeah.
How do we activate those people? Whether it's like this is what the Bible says about it, or this is how it directly affects you, or whatever. Like what? How do we turn that key to get more people organizing or flipping tables?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is courage, and some of it, I think where I have some of my academic heroes like Joy James. She wrote a book called Transcending the Talented 10th. I think about wealthy or elite Black people, and are sometimes, and I'm asking give personal experience, right? So my stepdad had a good professional job when I was a kid. He worked in higher education, ran the multicultural recruitment department, and we were proud of him. You know, I'm proud of him. Still proud of him. And it was cool to watch him go to work and be proud about his work, to know his work was doing something good and doing good by Black people. He invested a ton of time in community work as part of his job, and he wouldn't do that apart from community. He did all the things he needed to stay in that system and play the game appropriately, respectfully. When the housing crisis hit 2008 and the economy crashes and tanks, the university makes cuts, and they have, tens of millions of dollars in that endowment, but they ain't gonna touch it. Not for him. So when they cut his department, and one of the first round of cuts, these systems will not keep you safe. And so I learned that real clear as a kid. And sometimes we think that if I play the game correctly, they will protect me. They will not protect you. You can have a tragic death, and they will post your job next week. You could call FMLA, and they will find a way to replace you. So none of the system has to operate. No institution will compensate you for its death, and will compensate you for its demise. Institutions exist to survive and do whatever they have to do to survive. And so if that's how you choose to live, so be it. But also, you can't simultaneously say that is in service of your people. Right? So think about Sidney Poitier during the Civil Rights Movement. Sidney could have went protested and went and marched the line civil. No, he took the money he earned, put it in a suitcase, and they drove it to the front lines of the Civil Rights Movement. That's real right there, right? I think a lot of celebrities at the time did that. And so what we have in our kind of culture now is you have folks who do performance art to demonstrate solidarity. But they don't put any real risk and material conditions on the line. Or they curate their presentation of solidarity without any meaningful substantive change. And it gives the illusion of solidarity without any real, stakes.
Consequences, stakes in the game. Yeah. I mean, Jesus risked his life for this. And we're like, I'll give you this much.
Yeah.
I
would risk $25 a month.
Right.
I'm risking my once a month Starbucks, but I'm not gonna say that.
Yeah.
So
a lot of it comes to, I think, when we think about people walking in their calling and their purpose, whether it's ministry, organizing, is there some insecurity? I didn't go to school for this. I don't have a degree. I don't know enough about it. I'm gonna just let these people do it, and I'm gonna just like hope the best. 'Cause I feel like because to our earlier point, sometimes as gatekeepers we do a good job of saying like if you don't check all these boxes, you are not qualified to speak or say or do or anything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's insecurity, maybe it's fear. I think those are kind of sourced from the same thing. I would make like a horseshoe if I had a spectrum, like a horseshoe, and at each end of the horseshoe, you got people who are outside the system, so only know how to criticize. You got people inside the system who won't criticize. Both of those parties are unable to build with other people. And part of that, I think, is fear of sharing something.
Yeah.
Fear of holding something together. And then part of it might be that, like, maybe I can't do it. There's a lot of folks in the city who are really good at having an analysis of a problem, and they're right about their. I agree with them on most things. Are they gonna go do anything about it though?
Yeah.
And the answer is probably no. And they would look at someone like you, she's a sellout because she's inside.
Yeah.
It's like, but you're doing something, and it's in service and accountable to a broader thing. A lot of folks in the city say they're accountable to community, and they're never with that community. They're accountable to community, but you never see them with that community. Facebook streets are not real places.
No.
Twitter streets are not real places. Yeah. So I think in our modern kind of justice movement culture, we measure people off of those social media streets, and those are things that are not rooted in like real life.
Yeah.
And we're not going to change real things.
Have you ever been? Do you deal with the fear of failure, or what if I mess up or don't do this right?
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely.
Because I think I've dealt with that, and then like that was all like I use it almost like fear as to propel me. Like I'm going to overachieve because I'm so afraid to like mess up, and then I carry this guilt like I shouldn't have done this, I shouldn't have said that, and so I'm overachieving to like overcompensate. But I had to like work out of that because then when you look at people that check all these boxes, it's like they don't know what the hell they doing either, and they not doing it right. So why am I beating myself up thinking I gotta go get a doctorate and be blah 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 blah? I'm like, we just trying to get to work and make something happen.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that fear of like messing up and then overcoming it?
Some of it is, I think, like of any fear, you have to air it out, put some light on it. And so, sometimes in my organizing, I have been really, really afraid of people leaving. Because if people leave, it means I fail. And if I fail, it means I'm a bad person. As a kid, my experience of failure with anything was often punitive and very intense. I get yelled at if I didn't cut the grass straight. I didn't clean the dishes properly. I get hit with a belt. I get smacked. I mean, like, those things happened, and then so I don't want to fail, and I don't fail. So in my organizing, there's been moments where I find myself just like entirely overwhelmed because I think I ruined this relationship, and because I didn't align with self-interest, or they're upset. And sometimes the stuff folks are upset about, it's directed at me, but it's got nothing to do with me.
Sure.
And then upon that happening, my brain goes into overdrive of all the ways it's gonna like just crumble everything.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for getting through some of that in time, but it's a constantly learning process. Constant learning process. So there's a lot that I am still learning about my orientation to fear, but I would say that like as a recovering perfectionist, it's gotten better, and I still got a lot of room to improve. Yeah.
And do it anyway.
Yeah.
And if you mess up, like, okay.
Yeah.
We mess up every day. Sometimes we don't get it right. And there's no like right answer on some of this stuff. So we're all just like navigating. Like, I think this may work, it should, but maybe not.
And sometimes I have found that like my fear around perfection is that if I can tell myself that if I mess up, it's gonna cost somebody something. And I overinflate my impact on what will come out of a mistake. And if I mess up, if I make the wrong choice, it's going to cost somebody's life, it's going to cost somebody's career, and like, I don't have some sort of spell over people.
Yeah.
I'm not a magician. I'm a decent communicator, and I like to listen to people. People want to follow in our shared vision. People want to build together. So if there's a misstep, if there's failure, it's not I failed.
Yeah.
I fail to send an email sometimes. I fail to put the social media post up. But like that's never the things that are actually consequential.
Yeah.
For me to sometimes internalize and then say, oh my God, I'm gonna fail and it's gonna cost people is this kind of internalized belief about myself that I'm unlearning around how important I am to this movement.
Yes.
Because I know and I want to have a movement that does not require me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're actually, I think that is kind of where we're at. If I got disappeared, our movement would continue.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel very confident in that. But there's moments in time where I tell myself that if I mess up, I cost everything.
Yeah.
And there's a level of hidden ego in that.
Yeah. I called it, or I dealt with therapists about, do I have like this God complex?
Yeah, savior mentality. For sure.
Savior mentality. If I'm not here holding on to this thing, it's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I mess up, then it's going to affect everybody, and it's going to be so detrimental. Versus where I've learned to like live in this space of like, if I'm truly walking with Christ and believe that I'm walking in purpose, even if I don't do it right, God's hand is on it, and however God wants this thing to work out, it's what's going to happen. And so like releasing that like responsibility, I've got to carry all of this stuff on my own because like you don't have to, and you shouldn't, and you can't, because you are not God.
That's right. If I'm clear of people like this is the step I'm taking, and maybe it's not the right step, but like people know what the step is, agree to the step. I never get. I mean, it would be wrong for me to say I made that mistake.
Yeah.
Because we did something together, and I at times in my organizing, I have felt a tremendous level of responsibility for other people that is not actually my responsibility, and that is something in pastoring I did not learn. And it is a good thing I stopped pastoring, because if I continue to live that way, it would have destroyed me and it destroyed the people that I cared for.
Yeah.
And was in charge of shepherding. So I'm really grateful that organizing created the conditions for me to learn that, again, to learn it in community. And having a leadership team that I could be honest with that about with and work on that with, and with organizing coaches and call that out. Like that's the fun part of this work, is that you can't hide anywhere. It all shows up in the work.
Yeah.
And I've gotten better at not hiding.
Yeah. This is great. Can you, closing thoughts about anything to, recentering us around the Blurred Lines movement and the intersection of church, community, and career. Yeah. Any last words or advice or anything that we would give to somebody trying to navigate the space?
Man, there's so much to say. I'm trying to figure out what's the most concise thing to say. I'll say this. I mean, this is what I did in my master's program, and like what I fundamentally believe. God is bigger than what we can contain in the four walls, and whatever we experience, divine or not, in a church, and whatever experiences are contained in congregational life, are just a fraction of how expansive God is. And if that is true, which I believe it to be, then God is at work in profound, beautiful, mysterious ways outside the life of church. And if we don't have an openness and a curiosity to go figure out what that is and how it might feel and be different than church, then we're missing out on experiencing a really, really cool experience of God.
Yeah.
I don't think God wants to limit our experience with the divine to just what you experience in the four walls.
Yeah.
That is a great place to begin a journey. It is not the end-all, be-all.
Yeah.
When you leave, whether it's Sunday to Wednesday or Monday to Saturday, God is at work in all sorts of places, especially places we don't expect.
Yeah.
And part of blurring the lines, as I understand it, is being able to recognize where God is offering up some holy disruptions.
Yeah.
That we might see the divine at work in ways we didn't expect. And if we're open to it, you get to see something really special.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of the scripture, God can do exceedingly and abundantly above all that you can ask or think.
Yes.
We can't even, eyes have not seen, ears have not heard. Like, we can just go down, like, this is what scripture says. Yeah. We just have to, like.
And if that's true, then, like, we gotta let go of holding back what God might do.
Yeah.
And limiting what God might do. Or framing it so narrowly.
Yeah. In all the spaces.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. This
Absolutely.
was great. Thank you for joining in on our conversation. I kind of forgot the camera was here. So thank you for listening in on our conversation. Josh Riddick, everyone. So subscribe to the channel if this resonated with you. Share your story. Go to our website and continue to figure out ways where you can blur the lines and live a fully authentic, transparent life.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Blurred Lines podcast. If you would love to continue the conversation, if you want to share your story, we would love to hear from you. Go to liveblurred.com and share with us any experiences that you have. It may be featured on our podcast and our newsletter, or even having you as a guest on the show. So until next time, live blurred.